right, Nate. Here we go. Post-match, Wendy Chu catches Toxic Attraction in a net, and she and Perez spray them down with silly string. All right, interesting. We get a rundown of Spring Break-In or Breakout, whatever it's called, and it looks like a decent card, but a lot of holes in this one, and I have to say it could be good, but I don't have high hopes after this show. Joe Gacy is out in the arena and cutting a promo about his title shot next week. I'm liking his character. In fact, he's the only new NXT guy I like. Rick Steiner interrupts and comes to the ring and says that his son, Braun Breaker, is ready for next week. The Druids step up on the ring as if they're going to attack Rick, and Braun comes out to make the save for his dad. Joe Gacy hit a major cheap shot and ends the show holding the NXT title above his head. I give this week's show a 2 out of 5. Not many redeeming qualities for this episode and really took the wind out of my sails. Next week better be good because, again, I have to make the threat. NXT 2.0, if you don't get better, I don't need to watch. Now moving on to NXT Dynamite. Excuse me, AEW Dynamite. It's not NXT in any way, shape, or form. Show starts off with CM Punk joining commentary, and our opening match is going to be great. Dax Wilder versus Cash Wheeler. They came out together and have the Hart Foundation logos on their gear. This is going to be good. Then these two got to work and had as technically sound of a battle as possible. They went from move for move, and it was reminiscent of Owen Hart and Bret Hart. Very similar. Cash caught Dax off guard with a roll-up, but Dax countered and picked up the win in 16 minutes in an excellent opener. Congratulations, guys. After the match, we found out CM Punk will challenge Adam Page for the AEW title at Double or Nothing in Las Vegas. Punk cuts a promo and puts over the AEW talent, including Page. Punk says he's ready for Vegas and guarantees it will be a fight. I cannot wait for this one. It's what I've wanted since Punk debuted in AEW is for him to have a world title shot. Much deserving, and he's won a few months since he debuted, so he deserved it. He definitely has earned his shot. Scorpio Sky is backstage and cutting a promo about tonight's ladder match. He puts over himself and all of his accomplishments. Says tonight he will find out that he is the true face of the TNT. Let's go. Danielson, Yuta, and Moxley take on Solo, QT, and Camarada from the factory. Team Regal attacks as they take their opponents apart immediately to start the match. Mox then took it to Camarada at first and then Solo. He tags in Yuta, and Solo again took the beating, but tags in Camarada, and he just destroys Yuta. Danielson made the save and got in some sick kicks, but it was Wheeler Yuta who got another big win for his team at the 14-minute mark. Another solid trios match. I really like what they're doing with Wheeler Yuta. I think Danielson and Moxley are great, and how could you not love William Regal? Tony Schiavone is interviewing Jamie Hayter, Britt Baker, and Tony Storm again, just like he did last week. Ruby Riott gets in the mix and quoted Owen Hart. Britt and Jamie storm off, and I understand we're building the women's tournament, but this was unneeded. It really was. It had no place on the show. It's making no sense. Tony is then interviewing Jurassic Express and Christian. Jungle Boy is upset, but Christian showing signs of a heel turn and calls Jungle Boy a loser, and then fixes it by telling him to pick up his title and not be a loser. He then challenges any of the top 5 tag teams to come get a shot at the AEW World Tag Team titles, which is answered by Team Taz, Ricky Starks, and Hobbs. Ricky says they'll challenge anywhere, just let him know. This could be really good. Archer then takes on Wardlow, and before the match, MJF cuts a promo and says Archer will kill Wardlow. The bell sounds and Archer hits a senton from the apron onto Wardlow. Once they get in the ring, it's a different story because Wardlow hits clotheslines and a big power slam. Wardlow fought off a choke slam and proceeded to hit 4 power bombs and get the win in 7 minutes. Good battle of the monsters. It was quick. They all got in their shots, and it's good to see Wardlow continuing to win. In the ring, between a promo between Eddie Kingston, Santana, and Ortiz, and the Jericho Appreciation Society. Dumbest name ever. Kingston said it best during this one. He hates the sports entertainment crap. Guess what, Eddie? I do too. That's what this was, but Kingston saved it would hit the realness of his promo and telling Chris Jericho that if they intend to take him out, they need to understand what that word means in Eddie's world. We get a taped vignette of Sammy Guevara. Sammy says tonight he remains TNT champion, and it doesn't matter what the fans think. Slowly turning this man heel, I guess the way they wanted to do Cody Rhodes, but I'm liking it. We then go to Serena Deeb and Hiroki Shida, part 79. This was a Philly street fight, and it was exactly what you would expect. They used chairs, kendo sticks, and even powder. Shida fought hard and showed she was determined to get the win, but Deeb wanted it more. Deeb put on the Texas Cloverleaf and got the win in 15 minutes. Solid match. I just hope that this feud is over. Lexi is then backstage and she's interviewing MJF and Sean Spears. Well, before MJF yells at her and makes her run off. MJF says next week Wardlow's opponent will be smarter and taller, and you can't teach that. Enzo, Big Cass, who? Jesus. The House of Black have murdered Fuego del Sol and are about to remove his mask. A voice stops them and says they've been waiting for the right moment. Pentagon appears and brings out the returning Pac. And then in the ring, it is Rey Fenix back very quickly after a torn shoulder. Death Triangle reunites and gets the upper hand in a great segment. Tony Schiavone interviews Swerve Strickland and Darby Allin. They exchange pleasantries and promise that Friday night they will steal the show. We then go to the main event, which is a 10-man tag, excuse me. It's Cole, the Young Bucks, and Red Dragon of the Undisputed Elite taking on Dante Martin, Brock Anderson, Lee Moriarty, and the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison. Not to take anything away from their opponents, but this was a glorified squash by the Undisputed Elite. We saw the super kick party, great technical skills of Fish and O'Reilly, and the attitude of Adam Cole. Cole hit the boom and got the win in 9 minutes. Post-match, Cole hands the Undisputed Elite shirts, and everyone looks like they're a cohesive unit. And I apologize for my flub a second ago. This was not the main event. We still have one more match. But backstage, the Jericho Appreciation Society, dumbest name ever, are attacking Santana, Ortiz, and Kingston. Jericho throws a fireball on Kingston, and the JSA run off. Wow, I actually didn't see that one coming. It looks like this feud's about to get brutal, ladies and gentlemen. And now it is main event time, the ladder match for the TNT title between Scorpio Sky and champion Sammy Guevara. This was incredible, mainly because both guys were willing to do anything. The standing Spanish fly on the ladder was sickening, but there was way too much interference. Dan Lambert, Tay Conte, and Paige Van Zandt had no business in that ring. Sky sent Guevara into the barbed wire, but Sammy caught him on the ladder. Sky finally pushed Sammy off, grabbed the belt, and became a two-time TNT champion in 22 minutes. I am giving this episode a 4 out of 5. It was good and definitely had some must-see moments, but it was a little too much filler going on in the show as well. And that will bring us to the final part of our show for show reviews, AEW Rampage. And this week's show starts the same way last week did, in the ring with no entrances or announcements. No complaints, though, because it is Darby Allin taking on Swerve Shane Strickland. This history between the two of them was talked about throughout the match, and you could see the one-upsmanship going on. Counter for counter and move for move, Swerve and Darby kept up with one another throughout. Swerve hit his finisher, but Ricky Starks caused a distraction with Sting chasing him off. This allowed Darby to hook him up in a roll-up and get the win in 10 minutes. Good opener, but I did want it to last a little bit longer. At the announcer's desk, Chris Jericho is putting himself over and talking about the fireball incident on Dynamite. Santana and Ortiz come and beat the crap out of Jericho on the stage until security broke them up. I'm liking where this is going, and if we're getting Jericho versus one of the members of Pride and Powerful, I'm all for it. I love Santana and Ortiz, and I think that being in the ring with Jericho can only evaluate them even higher than they already have been. We then go to the ring for a 6-woman tag. It is Jade Cargill, Kira Hogan, and Red Velvet taking on Sky Blue, Adora, and Nightingale. This was a bunch of punches, kicks, and botches, and not in that order. The three enhancement talent girls were terrible. Hogan was bad. Velvet was just as bad, and Jade was okay. Jade hit the glam slam and got the win in 4 minutes. At least they kept it short. Backstage, Tony Schiavone interviews Darby Allin and Shane Strickland. Darby apologized and said if he wanted to go another 5 minutes, they could after Ricky Stark's involvement. Swerve says he knows it wasn't Darby and he's rooting for him in the whole Owen Hart tournament and is going to go get Keith Lee to finish off their business with Starks and Hobbs. I've liked the continued storyline between Swerve and Keith Lee being a tag team. I think it's given Keith some the right direction, but I don't know. I just hope that it leads to a great match between all four men. Keith Lee is then in the ring and he's taking on Colton Gunn. The young gun was outmatched and couldn't budge Lee. He got in one defensive move and Lee handled the rest. Spirit Bomb got hit and Keith Lee got the win in 8 minutes. Not bad, but not great either. Lee needs to stick with the tag team for right now with Strickland. Otherwise, he has no direction in AEW. Tony Schiavone interviews Jeff Hardy, and we find out that Jeff will take on Bobby Fish next week on Dynamite in an Owen Hart tournament matchup. Jeff and Matt run down the dream matches that we can see if Jeff advances in the Owen Hart tournament and then guarantees victory. We then hear from the Undisputed Elite with Matt and Nick doing a bunch of hoopla and Adam Cole making a bunch of noise. And all they really do is guarantee victory for Bobby Fish against Jeff Hardy next week. So both guys are guaranteeing victory. It's just a matter of who's actually going to get him. Danhausen is in the ring and he calls out Hook. Hook immediately answers, and Danhausen is shaking in the ring. They get interrupted by Mark Sterling and Tony Nese. Nese attacks from behind, taking it to both Hook and Danhausen. Hook finally lands a killer-looking suplex on Tony Nese, and then Danhausen puts a curse on Sterling and Nese. He then goes to handshake Hook, and Hook threatens him and walks off. I'm kind of glad that he didn't join Danhausen here. I'm probably sure they're going to do it eventually, but Hook does not need a comedy sidekick right now. I like Danhausen and all that he does, but Hook is too serious to be putting with that guy. Lexi is interviewing the Gun Club, and they are trying to say that they didn't lose to Keith Lee. They showed they could do it all. The Acclaimed approaches when offered to team with the Gun Club and asked them if they want a scissor. Okay. And then they both walk off saying they need to talk to their dad, Billy Gunn. This was bad. This was NXT bad. Mark Henry does the split screen interview with the main event combatants. Samoa Joe promises to lay a beat down on Trent. Trent says Joe may think he's going to hurt him, and he might even do it, but he's ready for a fight. Henry ends the segment and says it's time. So it's now Samoa Joe versus Trent Beretta for the Ring of Honor World Television title. Well, Joe kept his promise and delivered a beatdown. Trent got in a couple of shots with a drop kick and a right hand and a nice looking splash to the outside, but Joe kept coming. Joe hit a suplex and then locked in the rear naked choke and got the win in 10 minutes. I wanted more from this one and the opening match, but still good. Post-match, Tony Schiavone interviews Samoa Joe. They get interrupted by Jay Lethal, Sanjay Dutt, and the Great Khali 2.0. Orange Cassidy did his shtick with the big guy, and Jay Lethal hit the ring and went toe-to-toe with Samoa Joe. Show goes off the air with a pull-apart, and that was all. I'm giving this episode a 3.5 out of 5, but that was only because of the opening and main event. The rest of the show was pretty bad and was not, was really the good was cut short while they, put everything else they could that was kind of sucky on the show. This was the first episode of Rampage that I have to say I have not liked. And that's weird because I've liked them all. So it really goes without saying. I hope AEW steps it up a bit next week. I understand not every show could be a 5-star classic, but the last few weeks have been on both Rampage and AEW. Why start slacking off now? So that brings us to our final segment of the night, and it is viewer listener questions. I put out a post on the Facebook page of the We Can't Wrestle podcast, and I asked my listeners and my friends to go ahead and ask me some questions. So that's exactly what they did. And our first question comes from Bobby Anders, and he asked me what my favorite theme song was. Well, I have to say, The Undertaker is a fantastic theme song. It always gives me chills. Cult of Personality for CM Punk is one of my favorite songs ever. Even before it became his theme song, it was one of my absolute favorite songs that I had ever heard. So when Punk came out to it, again, I popped big. And the DX theme song has always been one of my favorites as well. So in that order, those three are my top three favorites, with The Undertaker definitely coming out on top. From Jason Joseph, he asked me, women's division, one from AEW and one from WWE. Who would it be? Well, from WWE, I have to give it to Becky Lynch. And here's why. This woman had a great career before she became the man, Big Time Bex. She changed her career and then got an even better one when she became the man. She then left for over a year and had a baby, came back and dominated again. So Becky Lynch is definitely my vote for WWE. As for AEW, it's a little bit harder. I'm kind of tossed up between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, but I think they would be my 1A and 1B if I had to choose. Britt led the division for the last year. Thunder Rosa did all she could to climb the ladder. The both of them had spectacular matches, so I have to go with the both of them. But as I said, on a 1A and 1B platform. Coming up next from Bobby Anders again, favorite faction. Um, Back in the day, it was the Generation X. I like the NWO too, but I think the DX being smaller and more condensed to only 5 or 6 members at the time. At the most it got to was 6, I think. It was fantastic. You know what I mean? That was back in the day. Nowadays, I'm digging the faction um of Edge and Damian Priest, and I hope they add more people to it. There's, as I told you earlier, talk of Tommaso Ciampa and Rhea Ripley joining them. So if that's the case, more power to them. But I'm liking what Edge and Damian Priest are doing right now as a team, and I hope it grows into a faction. Now coming up from Nathan Roberts, what is your favorite match of the year so far and favorite feud so far this year? I like it, Nathan. Favorite match of the year so far is well, from AEW, it's MJF and CM Punk from the last pay per view. Um, I mean, that dog collar match was as gritty and good as it gets. They put everything they could into that 30 minutes, and Punk and MJF leading up to that matchup was fantastic. From the WWE, I'm going to have to go with, I'm guessing, I'm thinking, it's a hard one actually. But Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania was actually good, although it was cut short. Um, they had a lot going into that match. The feud was great. Brock was around constantly, so it really added to the match. And in regards to the second part of your question of my favorite feud so far this year, from AEW it's Punk and MJF, and from WWE it's Roman Reigns and Brock. Both of those feuds made both of those companies better while they were going on. I kind of wish Brock and Roman would have went on a little longer after WrestleMania, so Roman would have some direction. But it's okay, and I think that MJF and Punk lasted the perfect amount of time. Once again from Bobby Anders, who's the most entertaining to watch then and now? Well, the most entertaining to watch then was the Macho Man Randy Savage. In my opinion, one of the best. He could do it on the mic, he could do it in the ring, and he was just fantastic, whether it was WWF or WCW. There was no better than the Macho Man. Most entertaining now, MJF. Maxwell Jacob Friedman is a heel through and through, whether he is signing an autograph and telling your kid to go fuck himself, or he is in the ring and yelling at the crowd at the same time. MJF is the most entertaining. So that's the answer for then and now, Macho Man and MJF. From Mandy M. Pesci. This one is long, so I'm going to go ahead and read it. Bear with me. You guys understand way more about the inner workings of these companies than I would. My question, though, is that with all the releases and rehirings of talent between the respective companies within the past few years, do you think that the WWE and AEW are in cahoots? And does it matter what promotion the talent wrestles for? It's one big cohesive money making company. Vince pulls the string on one side, Tony Schiavone pulls the string on the other side. Do they just want us to believe they are competing? Well, when the WWE bought WCW, Vince said he wanted to make competition for himself. And back then I would have believed it, yes. But fast forward 20 years later, I say no. Here's why. I believe that Tony Khan wants to have his own company and wants competition, but not in the same way that Eric Bischoff did. He's not trying to put Vince McMahon out of business. We've seen what it's like when there was only one major wrestling company doing all the work, and it wasn't that good. So to have another place for these wrestlers to go and to have another company to give the fans what they want, I think that's what Tony's looking for. On the other hand, Vince wants a monopoly and doesn't want competition anymore. Vince wants you to believe that the WWE is the only company in the world, whether you go to Japan, Asia, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. He wants you to believe it's just the WWE. So that's his way of thinking of it. No, I don't think they're in cahoots. I don't think that they want us to believe that there's competition. I think there is competition, and at times it's just not very healthy because Vince is constantly firing people for no reason, for budget cuts, and Tony is just hiring way too many people. So it could end up hurting both companies in the long run. Back to Bobby Anders' questions. Yes, Bobby sent in about five, and that's fine. Favorite promotion other than the WWF? Right now, it's AEW. AEW is miles ahead of WWE, in my opinion. You can be mad at me and call me a fanboy. I don't care. They're putting out a better product at times. Um, Back in the day, though, when it was the WWF, my favorite promotion was ECW. I was a diehard ECW fan. I hate that I never got to go to any of their live shows or their pay-per-views, mainly because my family said that was way too crazy of an environment for me to be in at 15 years old. Um, and yeah, so it was ECW all the way. I was a diehard ECW fan from '95 up until they ended. So, and our next question is from Ryan Damon. Top five favorite game shows. He says it worked on another podcast that he listens to and he wants to hear it here. That's fine and well. Let's start from number five. Number five would be Hollywood Squares. I always loved it. I found it funny. The celebrities that they would bring on to be in the squares were often funny. And as a kid, I remember laughing and just enjoying it. You know, Alf being on there as a kid was like, oh, Alf is on another show. And even to this day, when they do a certain variety of that kind of show, I still enjoy it. Number four, Pictionary. I don't remember if anybody remembers that show in the early '90s. They used to do a drawing show modeled after the board game Pictionary, and celebrities would come on and have a regular person as their um, partner or partners, and they would draw. And you'd hear these people make these outlandish statements of what they thought the person was drawing, and either they'd get the answer correctly after a couple of seconds, or they'd fall flat on their face. Either way, it was funny. Number three, I like Wheel of Fortune. I have a cousin named Lisa who's a few years younger than me, and she makes it very funny to watch because this girl can get an answer with just four letters revealed on a 10-word board. And I always laugh when she could do that. I'm like, damn, you're Rain Man. And she gets a little angry because she thinks I'm calling her autistic, which I'm not making fun of anybody with autism. What I mean is that for her to be that zoned in is hysterical. And I just like the aspect of people guessing the letters and then, either falling flat on their face with their answer, or, getting it correctly and then going to the final puzzle. It's always been a good show. Number two, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I've always been a Regis Philbin fan, and when that show came out, number one, his dressing style was fantastic back then when he would match the tie to the shirt, and the suit was always impelling, absolutely great on him. And the show aspect, the trivia aspect. I love trivia, and when I hear those questions answered, if I can answer them, I feel smart, and if I don't answer them and I get it wrong, yeah, I feel dumb. But you know, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was revolutionary in that they gave away so much money to people, ordinary people who came on and were good at trivia. And number one, with a bullet, Jeopardy. I have been watching Jeopardy with my dad and my mom and my granddad, God rest his soul, and now my wife, Sarah, since I've been 7 years old. So that's 33 years. Alex Trebek was my absolute favorite. And again, I love trivia. I love the aspect of three people going after each other and trying to one up one another. Very competitive show. I like when I see people in the hole for their money. Like, you got one guy who's sitting there at 10,000, and before the game's over, you got somebody at minus 500. You're like, wow, and I love Final Jeopardy as well. The whole all around part of that show is fantastic to me, and it's sad that Alex Trebek retired and then passed away, and now we have new host every so often. Ken Jennings, who was the most winningest man in Jeopardy history, by far is a great host, and Mayan Bialik from Blossom and Big Bang Theory is fantastic as well. So, yeah, I'm a Jeopardy fan. That's why it's at my number one. And our final question um, is again from Bobby Anders. As I said, Bobby asked 5 questions, and that's fine. It made it for a better show. Thank you, Bobby. Um, he asks me, predict who you think is going to take away the title from Roman Reigns. Bobby, Roman has beaten everybody on the roster, and I think it's going to take someone coming back, a bigger name, hopefully not Goldberg. Um, I just there's nobody on the roster right now. I'd like to say Drew McIntyre, but they've allowed Drew to be abused and put in bad feuds for these last few months. I'd like to say Bobby Lashley, but again, he's involved in a terrible feud with Omos and MVP. You know, Kevin Owens has been knocked down the card so much it's kind of ridiculous. Seth Rollins the same. Cody Rhodes would be the ideal person, but that's in a perfect world. In Vince's world, Cody's going to feud with Seth Rollins for at least until SummerSlam, and then probably end up in a feud with Kevin Owens or someone else on the roster. But I guess if I had to pick someone on the roster right now, it would be Cody Rhodes. At least I hope it's Cody. Um, for all he's been through, for all they did to him when he was in the WWE and he was Stardust, for him going out and becoming a journeyman wrestler and going around the world and to different companies and becoming the world heavyweight champion in Ring of Honor, the United States champion in Japan, and the TNT champion in AEW. I think Cody is deserving of a world title shot and push in the WWE. So, once again, thank you to Bobby Anders, Jason Joseph, Nathan Roberts, Mandy Ampeshi, and Ryan Damon for your questions. Very much so appreciated, guys. We will do listener questions again down the line. Next week, I should have Grinds My Gears back up and running. I haven't had anything that big of a deal to talk about yet. That's grinding my gears. So, thank you guys for listening. I hope this was a good show for you guys. I think it was good for me. We're at number 49. As I said, next week is 50, and I will definitely have something big planned. So make sure that you stay tuned. Thank you all for listening. And as always, I will see you next week on If You Smell what the Arch is Cooking.